everyone, welcome back to Changing Scripts, and I am Stephanie. I am your host of this documentation of learning to read in Chinese experience, shall we say. I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about my background, and I think I want to start including a little bit of that in the introduction. So let me give you a brief overview of who I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing it in such a visible way. This channel is meant to document my experience in learning the Chinese language, specifically, and I'll go into this in a little bit, reading and writing, mostly reading the Chinese language for a variety of reasons that I'll tell you sooner than later. As far as I go, I am an American in her mid-40s, trying to learn Chinese for the probably second or third time. First time was in Taiwan in 2003, second time was in Nanjing, China about 6 years ago, and this is the third time. Granted, the second time was probably the time I tried to learn the least amount, or had the least motivation due to many factors, and Taiwan was the first time, but I was completely enveloped with lots of culture shock and teaching for the first time, and that was super overwhelming. I'm actually covering that experience in a podcast that I'm doing as well, so I'll leave the link to that in the show notes below. Just in case you're interested about that cultural aspect. I'm also doing some comparisons between my time in Taiwan and my time now in Shanghai, China. I am currently living in Shanghai, China, thus the inspiration for trying to learn Chinese again. Now, this time, between the first time I tried to learn Chinese and this time, so from 2003 to 2017, when I returned in January 2017 to a Chinese-speaking country, I had taught language, the English language specifically, in a lot of different forms in a lot of different countries, including the US a bit, and more so writing, but I also did teach ESL in the US via writing, mostly. But I did teach EFL, English as a Foreign Language, and academic writing, business English, conversational English, test prep English for IELTS and TOEFL and TOEIC a little bit. So I did do quite a bit of language teaching in that 13 years. Actually, the vast majority of my work during that time has been language teaching. So I thought it would be interesting as a language teacher and someone who also got her master's and part of a PhD program in teaching a language. So I've got the practical experience and some of the academic research experience. So I thought it'd be interesting to document my own progress in learning a second language or third language, if you want to count my elementary level of Spanish as a second language. Sure, let's say this is the third. So I thought it'd be interesting as a language teacher to document my language process. Having said that, I would like to open up this YouTube channel if anybody wants to use this N of 1 experience to document anything as far as learning the Chinese language. Please just ask for my permission, but I'd be more than happy to say yes, yes, yes. And that would be interesting to have an outside perspective on that. But of course, I mean, we're on what, week 6? This is the week 6 update video. I'm not even following my own template. I specifically made a typed up template that I'm not following. This is the week 6 update video. It is currently June 4th, 2017. And if you see me look like this, I'm looking at my template, trying not to go off on a tangent. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm a language teacher, or I was a language teacher, and I'm now trying to learn yet another language. I did say I was kind of elementary level in Spanish, although I have halted and stopped learning about 6 months ago. And I don't imagine I will go back to that until after I leave China or until after I get a handle on reading Chinese. So it's at least another year hiatus from that. But honestly, if I can master reading in Chinese, I have a feeling going back to a language that was in text similar and grammar more complicated, I think I'll be okay. I think the third one's a charm, right? I hear that the third language is easier. So that's a little bit more about me. So it's not just like, hey, I'm trying to document this to stay motivated, which I am, but when I start throwing out geeky terms and things, I'm sorry, but they just come up because I've been exposed to people talking about language in so many different ways throughout the years, And I'm not sorry, because honestly, we need ways to be able to talk about this. So hey, feel free to start using some of these terms. All right, so that's enough about me, and that's what this channel is about. What I'm doing, my overall goals, and I outlined this a lot in a previous video, or in previous videos, but basically reading and writing are my main bits. Reading specifically, writing more so in tracing and selecting characters than handwriting them. I don't really see, practically speaking, that I will want to do that in any way, shape, or form in the future. So mostly reading, online reading, websites, newspapers, especially online texts are a really big motivation for me. I'd like to, like, there was a news item that came up this week, and I was trying to read about it through English language medium, and it was difficult to find exact information because people had translated stuff in previous years, and it takes a little while for things from Chinese to go into English language to be available in English, but it was something that was happening today or tomorrow, and I don't even know. It's the Gaokao in China. It was hard to find specific dates. Oh, sorry, the Chinese college entrance exam. There's a whole other reason. I just did a podcast on it, episode 23, on the podcast channel thing I just talked about. So it was hard to find that, so I'd love to be able to just research that in Chinese and be able to find out information that's happening right around me as it's happening, instead of after other people have translated it. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited that people are translating stuff so many others can read it, but I have the time and mental space right now to learn the language, and I really want to. Street signs, social media, maybe, depending on the slang factor involved and how difficult that is, and how long I'm here for. Honestly, I'm here at least for another 6 months, but we might stay a second year this time, as opposed to last time when we left to go back to the US, because we're not doing it this time as far as we know. As far as writing goes, I think I've already shared that. And one of my ultimate goals, or at least the beginning inspiration for starting this, is I wanted to create an app for expats living in places like Shanghai and other cities similar to that are international enough, that have translations on street signs and whatnot, but I wanted to be able to create something to help them learn the functional things around them, so they could read street signs and subway signs and just general signs you would see around you in the airport, in the subway, on the street, that kind of thing. I'm being redundant, but okay. So I wanted to create some apps for that, but in order to be able to create the app to help people read without translators, to actually learn the functional language around them, I felt like I needed to take 20 steps back and actually learn the language itself, so that I can break down the easiest way to get to the functional parts that are needed. So that's the basic overall goals, and I imagine that that creation goal is going to take at least 6 months, because after I get the language, or at least the beginning language part down, I have to go back and tweak some technical skills as far as the mobile apps go, and learn some new technical skills as far as the mobile apps go. I've done some computer programming with websites and databases, but I haven't done mobile apps yet, and I'm super excited. But it's a long way to go, so I don't want to do any of that until I'm remote, kind of close language-wise, so that I can have the mental space and the time to do all of that, because right now my time is being consumed with the characters. All right. So those are the goals. What are the tools I'm using to achieve them? And again, I'm just briefly going to go over them because I've gone over them before. Anki, the flashcard app, mostly for reading recognition of the characters and their meanings. I'm starting with Fluent Forever, the book. That's another resource by Gabe Weiner. I'm starting with his deck of 100 most common radicals, and it's going really well. Success. This week I got through all 100 characters. There were a few that I'm still confusing, but in general, I got through the 100 in one sitting on a train ride going to my next work location. So that was pretty awesome. So I'm going to be adding on to that and making my own decks this week, but that's coming soon. Writing-wise, I'm using the Chinese Writer app. I've done a few apps showing you that. And I have an old school notebook that I write down characters that are similar to each other in my horrible Chinese character writing, but I'm trying to get at least where the differences are near each other, so that I can know what to look for when it comes up in the properly written form on my apps and when I see it in the wild. And in the wild is the fourth thing that I'm using is I'm taking photos of characters that I'm recognizing when I see them out on the streets in Shanghai or in the other places in China that I'm traveling to for work. So I'm making little folders in my Google Drive, so when I see a character, like for example, I know the heart character, and although I don't know the Chinese name for it yet, or the pronunciation that goes with that, I know it means heart. So when I see that in a sign, I've seen about 2 or 3 already that I have in that folder, I'll take a picture of it and I'll upload it to that folder. And at some point I want to go back once I have like 6 or 7 or 8 of each character, and I want to go back and start translating those and figure out what they mean, and hopefully pull in some of those signs into my own flashcards so that it'll solidify the meaning of that character. And especially when those characters or radicals or characters are combined with other ones and they develop new meanings, I'd like to use those to do that, because I think context is a huge part of learning a language, and with the context around me all the time, I really want to utilize that resource. Last week's, the timeline. I've just started to compile my timeline, and it's got 1 item on it. Okay, April 30th, 2017 is when I started this YouTube channel. It is now June 4th in Shanghai, China. So it's been about 5 weeks. So this is the week 6 video, the beginning of week 6 video. Yeah, my labels are a little bit off, but week 5 has ended. This is my summary of that so far. So I'm going to add other things like the hitting the 100 radicals on 100 most common radicals on Anki. I'm going to put that as an accomplishment. So I'm not going to put failures on the timeline, but I am going to list the accomplishments and when I've moved on to different resources and things like that, so I can track my progression and the things that I used that worked. So I can recreate that, 1 for the apps I would like to do, and 2 for others if you would like to follow this. I'd like to have a shorthand version as opposed to like 15, 30-minute videos to get there. So if that ever is something of interest for you. This is not meant to be a teaching video, but I have been a teacher for a long time, so inevitably I'm going to overshare examples and I'm going to share resources, and I'll probably there'll probably be some teaching moments in here, even though I don't mean to. I don't know enough of the language to teach you the language, but inevitably there will be a lot of sharing going on. It's what I do. I just share. So mostly this video is meant to be motivation to me, because once a week I have to report back to you, whoever you are in my audience, my wonderful audience, and to myself to make my list of things to talk about, successes and failures. So it's a way to keep track and keep me honest. Am I doing the things I want to do to get to those ultimate goals of being able to read and write in Chinese by a certain time? I expect it to take, now that I've gotten about 150 characters under my belt, 100 of the radicals and 50 from random out in the wild stuff, and from the tracing app that I'm using, the Chinese Writer Tracer app, I imagine it will take me, I could comfortably do at least 150 more per month, maybe 200 a month. And for HSK1, that's about 150 characters, so that's, but I'm not done with those because I'm learning different things. So I'd like to get HSK1 under my belt over the next month, and then I think HSK2 is similar in number, so probably 2 months. So I'm guessing around HSK3 or 4 is when I'll actually start to be able to read simple news items, maybe graded news items, I think. So I'm expecting 6 months from that April 30th date that I said. Is it April 30th? Yeah, April 30th date that I said. I'm expecting about 6 months to be able to read simple texts. Now, I'm going heavy on vocabulary because the Chinese language has characters that make me a deer in headlights kind of learner. And so I'm going super heavy on becoming comfortable with seeing them, becoming comfortable, kind of becoming instinctual when I see them to get the meaning down. And I want to be able to get the physical memory with the tracing, so some physical connection to it. And that has been solidifying the meaning as well. I'm a very physical and visual learner, and I have learned that is super important, because that is something I did not do when I first tried to learn Chinese language back in 2003. And although I was learning traditional Chinese then. I'm learning simplified now because in Taiwan they use traditional and mainland China they use simple. I'm going to include some screenshots of the vocab sheets that my tutor then, it was a language exchange tutoring thing. I was, my friend who turned into my friend Sydney, she was teaching me Chinese, and I was helping her with her English. Mostly I was teaching her slang because her basic English was way better than my non-existent Chinese. But I'll show you some examples here, and it's just list upon list upon list of things that I had wanted to know. It was like restaurant items, basic counting, things like that, but there was no stepping stones to getting there. And that's what I'm doing differently this time, is that I'm starting with the basic radicals, and the common radicals, and which are the building blocks to the characters, which are then the building blocks to bigger, more complex characters, which are building blocks to sentences. And grammar is supposed to be very, very easy in Chinese, so I'm saving that to the end, because it's the characters that are the trickiest for me, and I think in general probably for most folks. So I'm saving grammar till the very, very end. So I'm not even touching any grammar books for ages and ages, for probably 4 or 5 months. I've downloaded some apps that folks have sent me, thank you, as suggestions, and they look really cute, really gamified, and something I would be totally into. But this is where I really agree with Gabe Weiner in Fluent Forever. I think for languages like this with such a different script, I think knowing a lot of the vocabulary before you get to the grammar can help you speed through the grammar, especially when the grammar is so simple, can help you speed through that part, and will really help you so you're not learning the vocabulary and the grammar at the same time. It'll really free up your mental space, and by you, I mean me, because like I said, I'm a deer in headlights when it comes to characters. I'll completely block them out, or I'll stress out that I can't figure them out, or I'll just ignore them completely, which is the same as blocking them out, but slightly less conscious of an action. So that is my timeline. Last week's goals. Successes. I have 1, 2, 3 successes. One is reading. I told you already I went through the Anki deck for the 100 most common radicals. I'm still reviewing them daily because I haven't had time to make my own deck yet, which I'm hoping will come midweek this week. I have a really slow work week after Tuesday. So starting on Wednesday, I want to start making my own Anki decks and including visuals and pronunciation. And I've got lots of tools for that. I just haven't had the time yet. So, but that's success. Success number 1 is getting through those 100 first radicals. And I'm seeing them everywhere around me in Shanghai and in the places we're traveling. And it feels so good to be able to at least know that part means this. So that's really awesome. The second success is in the Chinese writer tracing app. I was getting really bored with the ones that I was doing, but I couldn't figure out how to reset it, and I figured out how to reset it. And I'm doing a video on that specifically, and that's going to be posted a little later this week, or probably in the next couple of days. So with that, I'm able to change the characters that I'm tracing more frequently, so I'll be able to get through the HSK characters, at least in familiarity, and then later with meaning, but at least in familiarity and that physical memory of the strokes, which helps me remember them. If I can look at a character and kind of guess how to make it, for some reason it sticks more when I learn the meaning of it. Hey, you know what? I'm going with what works. So I figured out how to switch those so I can get through more of the characters and also get to the ones that I'm seeing in the wild that I don't know the meaning of yet, because it does have the meaning in the characters themselves. So that was pretty exciting. What I might do is make a video at the beginning and end of the week of clearing the deck, starting over, doing one game the first time I see those characters and guessing how to trace them and looking at the score there, and then at the end of the week doing another one and seeing how much I've progressed in that 1 week. I don't know if I'll get bored with them in a week, if I want to switch more every day, but you know, I did 4 rounds today of a new set, and I feel like I could do a few more days of that. So I might do that kind of before and after video, and I don't know how exciting that will be to watch, but it would be kind of fun to compare how correct the strokes are at the beginning of the week and the end. So although it might not be the most tantalizing video to watch, it might be interesting to see the progress. Just to give you an example, I'm looking at some stats today of completely new characters when I erased all of the old ones. I did 4 rounds. The first round was 3,520, and it went up in increments, and my last round of the 4 was 5,812. So, and again, you get points on it when you do the stroke order correctly, and when you get it before the character runs or hits the bottom of the screen, and you get extra points for this random rocket that shows up on the screen. But with all of those components in there, it did progress even just within 4 rounds. So I'm very curious. That's 1 day, 4 rounds. What about if I do that every day, which I've been doing most days? What would the score be like after a week? And should I change every week? Should I change more frequently? I don't know. These are questions that are coming up in my mind. So I'm going to think about that. The third success is an online community. I want to thank Taylor. I want to thank Patrick at Learn Chinese, who I talked about last time. And my new favorite Twitter feed for language learning is hanyu.co, hanyu.co. They do a really interesting breakdown of a word a day into its individual characters. They also have some apps that they recommended for me, but I don't have time to do new apps yet. But I'm going to check that out. There's even a language tracking, like achievement tracking part to one of their apps, and I want to spend more time looking at that. But it's just not happening yet. But I do appreciate their Twitter feed. If you're on Twitter and you're learning Chinese, I strongly recommend following them. It's very, very interesting. There's so many resources right now. It's just ridiculous. I also signed up for Tumblr and Instagram. Tumblr, my was for Instagram. I've always been lukewarm about it, and I'm not really feeling it again. But I don't know. Supposedly there's a lot of language learners on there, and I'd like to connect with as many people as possible so we can all help each other, keep each other motivated and things like that. Tumblr, on the other hand, has a really active language learner community. I'm just starting to connect to folks on there, so I don't have a lot to report yet, but I'm excited that even just within, 3 or 4 weeks, I've started to find folks online who are doing something similar. I do find that a lot of the folks online are either teaching the language or developing tools to create the language, and there are some folks learning it as well. But those are the 2 biggest groups I'm finding so far. And again, it's so early in the process, but those are the 2 groups so far. So I want to hook up with more people who are learning the language. But I'm excited to get in contact with developers because that's ultimately where I want to go. On a professional level, I'd like to get to that end. On a personal level, I'd like to just be able to read things around me and read the news and things like that. So that's pretty exciting. I didn't realize how many people were developing tools for people learning Chinese. I know Chinese is a really popular language to learn right now. I'm kind of revisiting learning it by accident, and it might be a very serendipitous kind of experience that I ended up back in China, right? Because I was kicking and screaming a little bit. The pollution here is intense, and my work travel load is pretty intense, and there are a whole bunch of things that didn't line up, but there was something else that was pulling us here, and so we just stopped resisting and came. So it turns out I think it's going to be a really good move, physically and otherwise. So anyway, that was a little side note. Last week's goals, successes and failures. Failures! Pronunciation. I haven't done anything with pronunciation. Anything. I don't even listen to the sound when I'm doing the tracing app because I'm too lazy to put in my headphones for the short times that I'm doing it most of the time. So I need to work on that. I tried to reverse engineer the word for road, which is lu. Excuse my tones, they're awful. And I'll show you a picture of how I did that. The problem is with the 3 radicals that are in it, I don't know any of the 3. So dissecting their meaning of characters I don't know and I haven't traced, I don't know the meaning of and I haven't traced, it didn't stick. I couldn't even remotely tell you unless I look at that paper again. So although it was fun to tear it apart bit by bit and try to understand it, sort of like the Shanghai Tushiguan example from last week, it didn't really work. I think it might work if I knew the radicals and it did end up adding up to something, but I think it only really sticks and makes sense when it adds up to something that I know in the original bit, if the end meaning is that. So I think I have to stop dissecting them as much and just go with memorizing for now. So that was kind of a failure, but it was fun to do, and it's interesting to see the radicals being broken, or the characters being broken up, but I think it's not really worth my time right now to do that. I know so little of the characters that it's kind of defeatist right now, so I'm not going to do that much anymore. I also misunderstood, apart from Fluent Forever, the 625 words that I was going to start on after the radicals. I misunderstood to be frequency-based, and I got a tweet. Actually, I tweeted Gabe Weiner asking him if anybody's ever compared the HSK levels with the 625 characters that he suggests for your first deck, and he clarified that they are meant to be concrete words that you can visualize easily. They're not based on frequency. So, whoops. With that in mind, I am getting used to the idea of, I'm starting to like the idea of HSK levels and HSK tests, and I kind of want to take the tests now. So I think instead of the 625 frequent forever suggested words, I think I'm going to do my first Anki deck with the HSK level 1s. I already know a significant amount of these characters, so adding the pronunciation and the visuals to the pictures to them, I think will be really, really good. I think I'll get through HSK1 pretty quickly and then move on to HSK2. So I think I'm going to do those levels and see how that goes as far as helping me understand stuff around me, and will that help me read and achieve my goals. If it doesn't, I can come back to the 625 list. But I'm going to veer off of Fluent Forever for a bit, which I figured would happen eventually. But that 100 Common Radicals Anki deck that he has is amazing. I still recommend that. I want to wrap this up really quickly. Next week goals, Anki decks. I want to do a pronunciation on HSK1. And maybe the pronunciation pack from Fluent Forever. I still want to start doing that. And I mentioned the before and after screencast. The burning question I have for this week, our new section, burning questions. Logograms that look alike, like close and spirit or sign. What are these called? They're not homophones that are pronounced the same but spelled differently, like in English add AD and add ADD. They're not homonyms where the spelling's the same but they're differently, like read READ and read READ. What do you call these logograms that look similar but have one tiny little stroke difference? I keep saying things like they have a common radical, or they have a base radical in common, or I'm making up all kinds of things. But if there is a name for this, I would prefer to have the name. It's not too much to ask. So if you know the answer to that burning question, please leave it down below. Viewer feedback. Thank you to CH on YouTube. He left a message on my last YouTube video, my last update video, asking, hey, are you learning simplified or traditional? Whoops. Sometimes when you're studying something, you get so deep into it that you don't realize you're missing something, and I had forgotten to mention to you guys, I'm in mainland China, so I'm learning the simplified. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please, if you like it and you want to follow my journey, I'm doing update videos every week, and I'm doing a Characters in the Wild video every week where I try to do some sort of natural language around me and how much do I know of what I'm finding. Please subscribe to the channel, pass the channel on. I'm going to retweet this on Twitter right now, so please feel free to retweet that. Paste it all over the place on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. Where are you? Are you on Instagram? Are you on, I don't even know anymore, but I'm sure there's more social media out there. Spread the word. If you know anybody that's learning Chinese, pass it on to them. I would love to connect with other folks that are also starting out. Again, I'm about 5 weeks in, so I'm very, very beginner, so if you pass it on to somebody who's advanced in studying literature, they might be a little bored. But pass it on anyway. Who knows? Who cares? Thank you so much. I care. I care that you're watching, and I really appreciate your support. and all of the emails, the tweets, the comments they're leaving. It's super awesome, and I can't wait to hear from you some more. Thank you. Bye-bye.